Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from OnlinePhotographyTraining.com. Welcome to my video series, Mastering Lightroom Classic CC. In this video, we're going to take a look at the adjustment brush that's found in Lightroom Classic CC. The adjustment brush is the tool that's in the far right of the tool. Well, it's right there, and the keyboard shortcut is the K key. So you could hit the K key to turn on the brush or simply click on the brush. And you can see there's a lot you could do with the brush. You could affect color temperature, a lot of different tonal values, clarity, dehaze, saturation, sharpness, noise, moire, defringe. You could even paint with color. But before we do any of this, I'd like to talk about some brush attributes. And the attributes for the brush are below this dark line. And we're not going to use the Ocelot as I demonstrate these attributes. We're going to start out with just this plain white image. And you can see right off, it says brush, and there's three different brushes, A, B, and erase. All that means is, as far as the A and B brush, is that you could have attributes set for the A brush. In this case, I have a specific size, feathering, flow, and density for that A brush. But then when I click on the B brush, I have a different size, feathering, flow, and density for that. So you could switch between those two brushes and not have to, it's a little faster than having to readjust size, feathering, flow, and or density every single time. The easy way to do this is with a keyboard shortcut, and the keyboard shortcut to switch between the two brushes is the / key. So hit the / key and you'll just toggle between the A and B brushes. So if you have a brush and you have a brush stroke, let's put that on there so we have exposure all the way down so you could see the brush stroke. And I want to erase the brush stroke, I could use the erase brush. So I could click on that, and then I could come in and erase whatever I put in. And you'll notice that if we're on the A or B brush and we look at the actual brush overlay, there's a plus sign in the middle. That means we're applying the adjustment. If I go to the erase brush, you'll notice there's a minus sign in the middle. So that's removing whatever we just painted on there. The easy way to switch between the two brushes, and the way most of us do it, is we keep the A brush or B brush active at all times to apply our brush strokes. Then if we find that we brush somewhere we don't want and we want to erase it, we simply hold the Alt or Option key in. It's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac. And as long as you hold it in, you'll be on the erase brush, and you could come in and erase whatever you just brushed. And you'll notice that the brush attributes are different. You could set them for your erase brush independently of the A and B brush. So those are the three different brushes, and I'm going to delete those right now. And now I want to talk about some of the brush attributes. Right away, their size. So we could change the size of the brush by just moving that slider. You also could use the bracket keys on your keyboard. The right bracket key will make the brush larger. The left bracket key will make it smaller. And if you have a mouse that has a center click wheel, or you're using an Apple Magic Mouse, you can either spin the wheel or drag your finger across the Magic Mouse, and you'll change the size of the brush. Is as easy as that. Now below that is feathering. Now you'll notice that when I painted the line, it's pretty solid. The edges are pretty defined, well defined. If I take feathering and I move that up, you'll notice now that the brush overlay has two circles. That space between the inner circle and the outer circle is the feathered area. And now if I draw a circle or a line, you'll see that it's kind of blurred around the edges. So we're feathered the edges. So that's all feathering does. And I'll get rid of these brushes as well by hitting the delete key on my keyboard. So next is flow. And you'll see there's an auto mask checkbox here. I'm going to come back to auto mask in a minute because flow and density kind of work together, and I want to demonstrate that. If I take flow and I put it down to 50 and I keep density at 100 and I get a brush and I paint a line, you could see that it's not as dark as it was when flow was at 100 because I'm restricting the flow of ink, so to speak, to the brush. I'm only letting a little bit of ink out, 50% of the ink, and we have this lighter gray line as opposed to that darker gray line that I painted a second ago. The thing with flow is it's cumulative. So I could click on here and I could just keep brushing and make it darker and darker and darker and darker until we get that pretty much solid line like we had a second ago. So I'm going to delete that. Now, the difference between that and density is kind of like a limit. Let's put flow, or keep flow at 50. No, for this sake, let's put flow at 100. Let's put density at 50. Now I'll paint that same line, and you could see that it painted this lighter gray line. But I'll click again and try painting again, and I'm just going back and forth, and you see it's not getting any darker. Density is kind of like a limit adjustment. You're not going to go past now 50% or 50. So it's never going to get darker. So flow is cumulative. Density is a limit. You can't get darker than that. And that's the difference between flow and density. In real world situations, sometimes you'd like to brush in, say, sharpness on an image, but you want to do it a little at a time. So you'll put probably flow down, maybe around 30 or 20, and you'll have density all the way up. So you'll brush in some sharpness, look at it. If it's not enough, brush in a little more. Brush in a little more. There are some situations, though, where you don't really ever want to go to 100. So you'll bring density down too, and that will kind of make sure that you don't go past a certain point. So that's the difference between those two sliders. You could use them in unison with each other, independently of one another, whatever works for you. And for this rest of this demonstration, I'm going to put these both at 100. I'm going to get rid of that line as well by hitting the delete key. Now, we're going to talk about auto mask. That's that little checkbox. And to do that, I'm going to go to this monochrome bars, and I'm going to turn on auto mask. Now, what auto mask does, it allows you to restrict your brush stroke to the tone and color you want it to be applied to. Meaning, if I go on here and I have that plus sign, see the plus sign of my brush is over the white bar, and I click and I drag down. You see how it's not going to the gray bar to the left? It's being restricted. It's only going on the white bar. Similarly, if I come over here and I keep that plus sign on this gray bar, this lighter gray bar, you'll notice that it's not going on the darker gray bar. It's staying right there. Now the key here is to make sure that plus sign doesn't cross over to an area that has tone and color that you don't want the brush stroke to be applied. For example, I'll start way up here and I'll click once with the mouse button and hold it in. I'll drag down. Now I'm just going to let that plus sign slip over onto the gray bar. And you can see now it's over there. Similarly over here, I could click once, drag down, and then let that plus sign slip over. Oh, now we're over there. So you got to be very careful that you keep that plus sign over the tone and color that you want the brush stroke to be applied to, and hopefully not allow it to accidentally touch the tone and color that you don't want it applied to. And I should say tone and or color, because in this case we're just really dealing with tone. So that is auto mask. We'll get rid of that just for that, and we'll turn auto mask off. Now there is some more masking down here. It's called range mask, but it's grayed out. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to go over to the color bars, and I'm going to keep the same brush, and we're going to draw a line from the white all the way right across. Now you can see after I drew the brush stroke, the range mask is now active. And when I click on this little drop down, there's two different types of range mask, color and luminance. Let's look at color first. Now when I look at color, it's telling me what to do. Basically, I need to grab this eyedropper and click on a color that I want my brush stroke to be applied to. So I'll click on green. Now you can see that it removed the brush stroke from everywhere but green And it's a little bit on yellow because yellow is kind of close to green as far as Lightroom is concerned. So that kind of restricts it. Now what you could do is come in here with this amount slider, and as I move it to the right, you could see how it's getting darker on the yellow and even coming on the white a little bit. But as I move it to the left, it's getting rid of it on the yellow as well. So with this amount slider, you could further either restrict the colors that are being affected by the brush, or spread out that a little bit, like let it go on to other colors that you didn't happen to click on. So that is what that does. Now you can also, and I'll get rid of this brush stroke just temporarily and we'll start over. I'll do another brush stroke. Once we get that color mask, I could come in, get the eyedropper, and I could click on, say, yellow. So it's got it kind of a little bit on white, it's on yellow, and it's on green. But let's say I want to add blue to it. I'll come to the blue over here on the right. If I want to add that to the mask, hold the Shift key in. And you'll notice that when I hold the Shift key in, the eyedropper acquires a plus sign. So I'm adding to this. So I'll click there, and you can see now it kind of is a pretty wide mask. It, of course, got both blues because I clicked on blue, but it's also probably where I don't really need it. So I could turn this down and kind of get rid of it. So I'm on the yellow, which I clicked on, and on the blue that I clicked on. So it actually worked pretty well as far as that is concerned. Now, I'll put this away. When you're done with the eyedropper, just click and put it back in its holder like that. But I am going to get rid of that brush stroke, and I'm going to show you one more thing here with the color mask. I'll go across, and I'll go to color. Now I could grab the dropper, and if I want to, instead of just doing a single click on one color, if I want to sample more than one color, I could just click and hold the left mouse button in and drag, and I'll sample across the green and the purple bars and let go. And you can see now it's pretty wide, and we could restrict it again with this slider. And you got across the green and purple. So that's how you would use this color range mask. So we'll get rid of that again. And I'm going to draw another line right across. And we're going to talk about the other mask, and that is the luminance mask. So we'll get on that. And you can see that there are a couple sliders with the luminance mask. First is the range. And by default, we're going to be getting the entire range of tonal values. So we're not masking anything. If I want to restrict it to the darker images, I'll move this one on the far right, or darker tonal values. I'll go to this far right little slider, and I'll move that. And you can see how it's starting to remove it from the lighter tonal values till it's just really on the darker tonal values. So it's on the blues, and it probably is on the black. We just can't see it. And we'll move that to the right now so it's across all. And if I go to the far left one, it will remove it from the darker ones, but leaving it on the lighter ones. So you could see how that is. And smoothness, let's, for demonstration purposes, keep this wide for a second. I'll take smoothness all the way down. And as I move this to the right, you can see it's kind of going in unequal, whereas when this was in the middle, it removed it more or less from right to left. But when this is all the way down, it's kind of taking it here and there. If I go all the way up and I move that same slider, it kind of does them almost equally. Maybe the darker ones are hanging on a little bit. And similarly, we could go to the other side, and you can see it's almost equally. So you could move smoothness around to see if it better helps you apply your mask where you want it, your luminance mask. So those are the three types of masking involved here: auto mask, luminance masks, color mask, and of course we'll just put that off. So I hope that helped better explain that in all these different brush attributes. Now in a real life situation, we might want to use a brush for a lot of different things, and we could put in a lot of different types of brushes, and we're going to work on the Ocelot for this. Now for the Ocelot, I'm going to put feathering towards the middle, and I'm going to keep flow and density all the way up, and I'm not going to use any masking, so auto mask is not checked, and we're not even going to worry about the range mask. We're going to reset. Now if you have these sliders all over the place and you want to reset them all, you could just double click on the word effect. Double click on the word effect and you'll reset everything. If you hold the Alt or Option key in, Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, you'll see that the word effect goes to reset. So you could technically have these all over the place, hold the Alt or Option key in and just click once on reset and it will reset them. It's easier to just double click on the word effect. So what I want to do is I want to work on the Ocelot's eyes. So I have the brush open, and remember we talked about this with the spot removal tool. If I want to zoom in, hold the Shift key in, and the cursor turns into the plus magnifying glass so I could easily zoom in. And if I wanted to drag around, I'd hold that space bar in, and then I could drag the image around. Now I want to get a brush that is just a little bit smaller than the cat's irises. And if you look up here right to the right of effect, there's a little drop down, and there are some brushes that come in Lightroom that help you adjust eyes, skin, teeth, mostly for people, but you could use the iris enhance on the Ocelot and it will work great. And you can see that when you take that brush preset, it turns exposure up a little bit, it turns clarity up a little bit, turns saturation up a little bit more. And we could come in here and you could then just brush this in. And if you make a mistake, you could just quickly erase it by holding the Alt or Option key in, remember, and you'll switch over to the erase brush. So if I accidentally go over, way up there, I could just get that Alt or Option key, hold that in, and then I could erase this part that I don't want. So we could do that. Now, once you have that brush stroke brushed in, you could look at the overlay by just hovering over the little button of the brush, and you could see that you'll have this little red overlay. You also could go down here in the toolbar. Remember we talked about the toolbar with the spot removal tool. If you don't see it, hit the T key on your keyboard and it toggles that toolbar off and on. And you could just click right there to show the overlay and click again to get rid of it. And if you don't want to see these little buttons, you can see right now I have it on auto, and we talked about this again with the spot removal tool. When I hover over the image, you'll see the little button. When I come off, it goes away. If you don't want to see those at all, you could use the drop down and go to either always, so they're always showing. Or you could go to selected, so only the active one shows. And again, we talked about that in the last video, or never. Personally, I like it on auto, and if I need to get rid of them, and what I failed to mention in the last video, you could hit the H key on your keyboard. The H key will toggle you between never, hit the H key again, and auto. So the H key is the way to go, in my opinion. Have it on auto, and then hit the H key if you want to get rid of them. And then they're there. Of course, they go away when you close the brush down. So once that brush stroke is applied, and it's active, okay, this is the active brush. If I had more than one brush stroke, and I will in a second, I'll show you, you could click on the little button to make it active, make that brush active. So I could come in here and I could then readjust this. See, I could make the cat's eyes like radioactive, bright. I could just make them brighter. I could add a little more clarity to them. Maybe I want to add some sharpness to the eyes. So that's it. I did the cat's eyes, and I'm going to hold the space bar in. We'll zoom back out, and we'll turn the brush off with this little button right here. There's a little like on off switch, and you can see there's before and there's after. Now another thing I might want to do is I might want to sharpen the fur of the cat. So that is, you know, I could use of course, the detail panel, which we're going to talk about in a future video, but many times on wildlife, I call it my fur and feathering workflow. I don't like to use that. I'd like to use a brush instead. That way I could apply the sharpening right where I want it. So to do that, we need a new brush. So I can't just reset these now because I'll be changing the attributes of this brush, and I don't want to do that. So we're going to click on New right here, and we're getting a new brush. And we're going to reset everything by double clicking on the word Effect. And for this brush, I want to take sharpness and push it up. And I want to get a brush that's just, big enough where I could get into the cat's ears good. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to brush in sharpening. So I'm brushing in on the cat's fur, and in this case I'm just being careful. I don't hit the eyes because I already did that, and I don't need those any sharper. So I'm just going to go do a real quick job. We're just going to brush in sharpness on the cat. Now you can see that button is there, and if I hover over it, there is our brush stroke. And you can see I spilled over on the cat's left shoulder, which is to the right here. Right here, I spilled over. So I could turn this overlay on so I could see it. Then I could hold in the Alt or Option key. Again, it's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac. And I could come in here and get rid of that where I spilled over a little bit. And I didn't get it over here real good. So when you have this overlay showing, it helps you better see where your brush strokes are. So I could just add sharpening to the cat. I don't care if that background's sharpened. I don't want it sharpened. I want everyone to look at the Ocelot. I don't want them looking at the rock or the wall behind the Ocelot or anything like that. So we'll turn that off, and there's our sharpening. Now, with that active, of course, we could do a lot more. I could turn contrast up. I could even add some saturation if I want. I could go crazy or just add a little bit of saturation. So that's kind of a real-world example of how you might want to use a brush. Now, one thing I'll show you real quick, it wouldn't be something I do to this image, but we could paint with color. So we're going to get a new brush. We're going to double click on the word, or just click on the word New. Double click on Effect to reset the sliders. And right here where it says Color, if you click on this little swatch, you'll come up with this color picker. So you could select a color. So I could click here, let's say, and select like a yellow, or click in here and get something, a cool color, or reds or something like that. Another thing you could do, which isn't really obvious, is you could sample a color that's in the image. And to do that, what you would do is you would click on this color picker anywhere. So I'm going to click right there, but hold the left mouse button in. Then come over the image, and I'll sample this color right there. And you'll actually then, the color picker will adjust itself so it's that color. So that's a way you could sample a color in the image. Let's do it again and sample the cat's eye. So I'll come over her eye right there, and now you can see it sampled right there. So you can paint with color. Now I'm going to just demonstrate by picking a really obnoxious color that's really obvious to see. And once you do that, you could come in here and paint with that color, just like that. And if you decide you want a different color, just click on a different color, and you can see how that's the active brush, so it's changing. And just like as simple as that. Now, if you want to reset this color swatch back to off, basically, double click on the word color. You'll also notice if you hold the Alt, or it doesn't do it with the Alt and Option key, but just double click on the word color and it resets it. And we could come up here and delete it since it's not doing anything anymore, and just make sure it's the active one. Click on it and then hit the delete key on your keyboard, and we got rid of that. So that's pretty much the most important functions of the adjustment brush that's found in Lightroom Classic CC. It's a very handy tool, one that I use a lot, and I think most photographers that use Lightroom use the adjustment brush a lot. So we're going to come back here, see how this reset itself? Double click on that and get that back to nothing. So just like that. And we're done. And when you're done with the brush, you could click Done right here, see on the far right, or you could just close the brush, either or, and it will save those settings, and you're good to go and continue on with your processing. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.